Should I start with something like this is the story of...
Yeah, just whatever feels right.
My name's Max, and this is the story of my 3 million poker hands in 1 year bet from 2009. So I started playing poker with friends when I was about 14 with friends from junior high. And we would play like almost every weekend, usually like random, not really Texas Hold'em, kind of just random poker games with like wild cards and all kinds of things like that. No one particularly knew what they were doing. But as we got a little bit older into high school and kind of the poker boom in America was starting, like televised poker was getting big and the World Series of Poker was getting big, we got, I think, a little bit more serious, playing more real games like Texas Hold'em. We would play in the morning before school started, during lunch, sometimes during class, on the bus, kind of like all the time. I was known to always carry a deck of cards in my pocket. One friend for Halloween dressed up as me with khaki pants and a deck of cards in his pocket, and that was kind of my trademark. Math was always my favorite subject, so I think it became kind of interesting to think about strategy and like how to play better and learn from kind of like losing sessions, learn from mistakes and stuff like that. As we went to college and we turned 18, we could start playing online. This guy, Chris Moneymaker, was this accountant who played a $20 small tournament that got him a seat into the World Series of Poker main event, and he ended up winning that for millions of dollars. And that kind of further kicked off the poker boom in America. And all the sites at this time were kind of just operating however they wanted. They were based offshore, but they were just kind of operating under the idea that a game of poker is a game of skill, and therefore it is fully legal in America. And so every day after school, when I turned 18, I would go home and play these tournaments online, these usually like 1 table or 2 table tournaments with either 9 or 18 people, kind of small stakes, like between 10 and $30, $50, something like that. And I think that's when things started getting a little bit more serious for poker. We saw that kind of like when you can play online, a lot of people didn't really know what they were doing. Not that we were like big experts, but there was kind of a lot of money to be made. So as throughout college, every summer, that was all I did. Kind of no internships, just poker. When I graduated in 2008, that was kind of the year of this big recession. Poker was still pretty profitable at the time, even though in 2006 there was a law that passed that made it a bit more difficult to get money onto the sites. But it was still kind of in this boom period. So given the kind of lack of job opportunities and how I'd put all this time into poker, I felt like it was a pretty easy decision to make poker my kind of career, my first job, going full time. Starting when I graduated in 2008, I moved into my parents' basement. I got a 30-inch screen in the center, 2 20-inch vertical screens on the side, and then 3 20-inch screens going horizontally on the top. So I would usually play most my tables in the middle screen, and then have all different things on the sides. There are these programs that kind of like calculate all the statistics on your opponents as you're playing, so you could kind of have the statistics on the table, but then you could also have your like session statistics in a window on one screen. Could have kind of like the lobby of the poker room on a different screen to find when you need to open a new table. So it was a good setup. But I guess when it became like this full-time thing, it became a little bit more a little bit more serious and a little bit scarier because you don't win every day. Like, even for possibly weeks at a time, you could be kind of struggling. So it's kind of tough to be in this situation where you're not completely sure how profitable you are, and you also really have to kind of think about what games you want to play in, what stakes you want to play, how much money you want to keep on the poker site, which poker sites you should play on. All these kinds of like business decisions, in addition to making sure that you're studying poker strategy and like reviewing your hands and kind of talking with friends and thinking about all these kinds of things. And then in addition to that, this is when kind of some early poker calculation tools came out where you could kind of like calculate the optimal strategy given like your opponent did this, what would be the optimal response kind of thing. So for the second half of 2008, that was kind of the first period that I played seriously. And I think it went pretty well. I was playing pretty consistently. I was kind of waiting for these two friends to graduate from their they had already finished undergraduate, but they were working on graduate degrees. So we had kind of talked about moving into an apartment in Chicago the following summer. So I felt like this was like a really good opportunity to kind of just grind and accumulate some profits from my first period. I think the profits were probably, I believe it was something like 150,000, primarily in just the second half of the year. And in 2009, so the Poker Stars was kind of the main site that I was playing on, and they had this kind of like very generous VIP program where if you played a certain amount, you would get, every time you played, you would earn these player points. And if you reached 1 million points, that was kind of the top tier. And if you did that, you would get something like, it worked out to something like 50% of the money that the site made from you, you would get back, which would be something like $130,000 that you would get back from the site in terms of the value of these points. As I was thinking about what my goals would be for 2009, that was kind of like the minimum goal, that I wanted to hit these 1 million points. The higher the stakes you play, the more points you get per hand. So I was playing kind of like mostly medium stakes, like $2, $4 blind, no limit Texas Hold'em, usually 6-handed tables. So I would have had to play probably something in the range of like 1.5 million hands. That seemed like it would have been a reasonable goal, but I guess I was ambitious and thought that going for 3 million hands, so kind of double that minimum goal, would be not so difficult if I kind of played consistently and seriously throughout the year. And it seemed like a good idea because that was my first like full entire year that I was going to be playing professionally. So as the year was starting, that was kind of like a personal goal that I don't think I really shared with other people. Also, as the year was starting, I was kind of like thinking to myself, kind of like strategizing on the sort of business side of things, like what stakes do I want to play, kind of how many tables do I want to play at once, because there's kind of a trade-off. If you play 6 tables at once, you'll probably make more money per table, but if you play 16 or 20 tables, you might make more money per hour. And the most tables you could play on Poker Stars was 24 tables at once. There were all these decisions to make, and I ended up kind of deciding that I would do this strategy called short stacking, which is where you buy in at each table for the minimum amount of chips, which was 20 big blinds. So at a $2, $4 table, you would buy in for $80. The good thing about this strategy is that you don't have a lot of money relative to the blinds at the table. So a lot of people at the table have $400, or if they've made profits, they might have 800 or even 1,000 or more. So it's kind of like in this kind of like optimal situation, you might have 5 people at the table who have a lot of chips, and you only have this $80, 20 big blinds. So it lets you kind of take advantage of of kind of like, you have this low stack and they have these big stacks. So like if one of them, if they're kind of like playing against each other, and then you can suddenly enter the pot and like go all in. Okay, I'll try this again. If two people have, suppose two people have like, say like $800 at the table, one might raise to $12 pre-flop with some hand like, like king queen. The next person might kind of like try to make a bluff play and re-raise from 12 to 40 or something with like ace 5 suited, kind of like just as a way to like make this aggressive kind of play to build up the pot against the first opponent. But then as a short stacker, you're sitting there with only $80 in chips, so you're not risking that much, and there's already a lot. In this case, there's already all this money out there that you can kind of go all in and try to take. So essentially, as a short stacker, you're kind of like this nuisance at the table. The negative to using that strategy is that people find it to be very annoying, which is not a monetary negative, but kind of a cultural negative. And B, that your poker skill is not really, you're not exactly playing the same game as you would be if you had 100 big blinds or the kind of the full stack that most people would buy in for. So essentially, I made the decision to kind of go for this quantity over quality in terms of my play for the year of 2009. This allowed me to play, I was kind of regularly playing like 20 tables at once, which would be probably something like 1,600 to 2,000 hands per hour. So I was able to accumulate these points very fast. I was able to have like a moderate win rate, not great, but decent. So if I wanted to play 3 million hands on the year, that would mean that I only had to play maybe between like 1,500 and 2,000 hours per year, or for the year, which seemed like very realistic. That's kind of like a standard full-time job. I don't know, for some reason, for the first few months of the year, I didn't really play that much. I kind of was like into golf and like not taking it quite as seriously as I should be. And then at some point, kind of in the early summer, I messaged a friend and I said, I've played something like 200 or 300,000 hands so far this year, and I'm going to play 3 million. And he said, that's not really possible. That's like kind of crazy. And I said, no, I'm definitely going to do that. And he didn't really believe me. And poker players like to put money behind their statements. So I offered the bet of $10,000 with 3-to-1 odds in his favor. So if I succeeded to play 3 million hands, he would owe me $10,000. And if I failed, I would owe him $30,000. I needed some accountability to like push myself to do this. And I felt like, so not only am I kind of like forcing myself to do it with this bet, but it also means that I'll ideally make a lot of money at the tables by doing this. And I chose to do the 3-to-1 thing because I think I felt like that was like too much that I wouldn't be willing to give up. Like losing $30,000 would be kind of too big of a disaster to let that happen. As the summer progressed, I think that was probably like the beginning of June, I set up like a spreadsheet that said like, okay, you have this many days left in the year. You have to play, in order to hit this goal, you have to play this many hours per day with 7 months and probably like, so that's what, like 200 days, something like that. I probably had to play about, I don't know, like 13,000 hands per day.
How many hours would that be in a day?
Yeah, so that would probably be 6 to 9, depending on how many tables and things like that, which still seemed like completely kind of reasonable. Like a kind of a 50-ish hour work week seemed very reasonable. I guess I should mention that like an hour of playing poker is like, especially if you're playing 20 tables at once, is like extremely focused and is like very like you can't get up to go to the bathroom, like you can't be watching TV. You're like very intent on the screen in front of you, and it is possible to play 20 tables because most situations you encounter are like fairly automatic, and many times you're just folding your hand before you even do anything. So it's intense, but it's like fairly reasonable, especially doing the short stacking strategy where you're not you don't have as difficult, you never have super difficult situations. So as the summer progressed, this kind of like, say, 7-ish hour per day requirement kept growing slowly because I was essentially never hitting the daily, weekly goal that I needed to hit. I was still sometimes playing golf, but now kind of like more guiltily doing things like that. I was also in talks with these friends to finally move into this apartment in Chicago starting September 1st. I was playing like a fair amount, but not anywhere near what I should have been, probably like maybe half of what I should have been. But it didn't seem like that big of a crisis. I guess I don't know, I had this concept that like, if I set this goal and there was like this much money to lose, I had in the back of my mind, it was like always going to happen somehow, even as the hours per day kept rising. By the end of August, when it was time to move to Chicago, I had played something like 500,000 hands total for the year, leaving me with 2.5 million in 4 months. I probably needed to be playing a little over 20,000 hands a day, which is very not good. That was probably, if I was playing like, so at this point I was probably like only playing 24 tables at once, which is in itself is not good in terms of win rate, because it once you go past, I don't know, 20, it becomes quite a bit much. So I probably had to play about 10 hours a day at this point. Something like 10 hours a day. And little did I know that 10 hours a day would be actually not so bad. So yeah, moving to Chicago was that was kind of took a few days of like not really being able to play very much because of the kind of logistics of moving. The apartment was kind of a 3-flat Chicago apartment, so like a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment on the top unit, same on the middle unit, and then our unit was the bottom, which was ground level. We had 4 bedrooms. I had the master bedroom, thank God, because I was not really leaving very much. So it was actually like probably like the nicest room I've had, even including apartments that haven't had roommates. It was like really new construction. I had windows. It was like kind of underground, but the windows were like at ground level, basically, out the front. So it was kind of, that probably helped because it wasn't like a dungeon. It was kind of green and some sunlight. I had very little kind of like stuff in the room. I had my bed, and then directly in front of the bed was my desk with the same computer setup that I described before. So like the 30-inch on the bottom, on each side of the 30-inch was a 20-inch vertical, and then on the top row was 3 20-inches going horizontally. So yeah, a lot of pixels. And then I had my own bathroom with like it was like a really nice bathroom. It had like steam shower and a jacuzzi tub. Not that I was like using these things, but it was like it was a really nice room. And then even it had like this huge walk-in closet that was like big. At one point, someone was like staying. One of our friends was staying over, and he like slept inside the closet because it was that big, and I like didn't even have clothes in there. So overall, I think it was like a very comfortable setup. I kind of decided I one of the things that I kept doing as this was going on was like every week essentially I'd remake the schedule and like, okay, this starting now I'm actually gonna stick to the schedule, which is essentially like never happened. So that means so like 9 months of the year had gone by and I had only done 1/3 of the goal, which was pretty bad. So by the end of September, I think that was like the first time where I was like, okay, this is getting to be a bit of a problem. And I contacted this woman who ran this catering company. I had these email discussions with her about kind of catering like 3 meals a day to the apartment. And luckily my parents lived nearby and were supportive, and I think offered to pick these up like twice a week and bring them. And they were the kind of thing that you could just like reheat in the microwave. So that already felt like, okay, now I'm not really, this is not how one should be living, like heating up every meal in the microwave. Although I guess now there's like all those, that's like become kind of a thing. I realized like going to the gym is kind of like not really feasible at this point. Still at the beginning of October, it was like kind of, now I had like set up this new system with the food and the like at-home workouts and things like that, and it felt like kind of under control, but like in a worse way, kind of. As time was going on, it was like very hard to kind of complete the daily amount to like hit the required goal if I wanted to have it be like this consistent, steady amount throughout each day. Yeah, it became something like 22,000 hands per day at that point, which was maybe like 11 hours a day. Like at that point, I think I knew it was kind of an emergency, and that was probably like one of the more consistent periods I had, but it was still not quite what I should have been doing. Like sometime, I think it was probably the beginning of November, we had this friend named Dan who was home from college and was kind of like at our apartment a lot. So I offered him to become my kind of assistant. And at this point, like I wasn't really leaving my room even. Like I was, like the only thing I was doing was like going and heating up food and coming back. And I felt like even that had become difficult to do, because the thing is, there's kind of like this, it takes kind of a while to like load up the tables at the beginning of the day. And if you spend time shutting them down, that also takes time, and then you have to load them up again. So it's like, it's very efficient to not have to stop playing. Already, I mean, even earlier in the year, I was peeing in a bottle, like always, which is, many poker players did this actually. And that, I don't know, it's not, it doesn't feel the best, but it's very efficient. And that's what was important at this time. And so, so now I have this assistant who is like, his job description was he would make sure I was awake in the morning at a certain time. I think it was like 6 a.m. Make sure that I got the 3 meals a day, like kind of just delivered to my room. And that was basically his entire duties. So yeah, basically, I don't know, my freedoms and my like, ability to like act independently kept diminishing. I remember there was like my friends threw a Halloween party at the end of October, and I remember being able to like take a 20-minute break to go upstairs and like say hi to people, which was like probably my like the main social interaction that I had for that entire like 3-month period from October to the end of the year, which is kind of sad. By the end of November, I had played just over 2 million hands. And so for December, I had to essentially play 1 million hands. And I forgot to mention this before, but the terms of the bet, so it wasn't just that they could be any hands, they had to be at least $1, $2 blinds, which means I was buying in for at least $40 on every table. And the reason was that because otherwise I could have just played like 1 cent, 2 cent, and kind of like not cared and just clicked buttons, and you can't, of course, lose that much playing 1 cent, 2 cent. So that was the $1, $2 was the minimum that qualified for the bet. So going into December, there was 1 million hands to go. So yeah, so that the expectation was probably about 500 hours for December, which is I don't know, that's like 17 hours a day. And at this point, my birthday is December 1st, so I think that was like it was kind of not my finest birthday, but it felt like this was really kind of do or die at this point. Like when your requirement is to play essentially 17 hours a day, you can't like oversleep, you can't like miss anything. So I was kind of just like, this is what I'm doing, and there's no other choice. Like whatever freedom, however like it seemed like there was lack of freedom when I was playing like 12 hours a day or something, now it was literally kind of sleep, get out of bed, go to the desk, and just play the entire day. Nothing else was possible. And I think at this point I started playing more than 24 tables by adding on like Full Tilt Poker, which was this other poker site. I didn't feel that secure having to play 17 hours a day. And so I thought if I added like, I don't know, like 4 to 6 extra tables and cut it down to like, maybe then the requirement would be, I don't know, like 14 hours a day or something, that would make things a little more kind of realistic. And I think at this point my win rate dropped. I think I was still like profitable, but I kind of like distinctly remember this one hand where I was like just like not able to keep up with the hands, and like saw that I was like in the middle of a hand I had like bet, someone had raised, and I just like folded the bet, like aces, like before the flop. Poker teaches you to be like pretty emotionless, and I think especially if you're playing 20 tables at once, you don't have the energy to get too upset or happy when certain things happen at the table. But that kind of thing that's like human error felt really bad, and I remember being like feeling like really stupid about that. And I guess overall, the being in this position where I had to play this many hands and hours a day was like already kind of this massive human error. But that was like a good way to see it in like this micro, like very obvious way. As December was going on, I was getting like really exhausted and would sometimes just be like almost falling asleep in my chair. And at this point I enlisted Dan to have an additional duty, which was to like check on me periodically to make sure I wasn't either like dozing off or like had crawled back into bed or anything like that, because that was like very tempting. I remember that after he did that, he started doing that, I realized that there was a loophole that I could go hide in the bathtub in the bathroom in order to, so that he wouldn't see me like sleeping in the middle of the day. And that is pretty sad, but that's like the kind of level of desperation I was at to sleep, even though I was in this kind of crisis where I couldn't really be sleeping. But it felt like, I don't know, getting in like 10 or 20 minutes of sleep seemed like worth it to be able to think properly or something like that. The last week or 10 days or something, it was something like I needed to be playing 18 hours a day or something like that. And I still had like multiple sites going, trying to play like 30-ish tables at once. And I think I was just like ridiculously exhausted at this point. So over the last week or so, I was basically just like losing a lot of money at the tables, kind of like falling asleep regularly, like folding things on accident. And at that point I thought, okay, maybe I should try to like get out of this bet, because I've probably played like, I think it must have been like 2.7 or 2.8 million hands. Like the achievement of like succeeding in playing a lot of hands this year and like making a good amount of money this year was already complete. And it seemed like at this point I was worried that I would actually lose a lot of money in this last week, and almost maybe potentially like nullifying the bet. The person I bet against said no, because I think he was kind of wanted to, I guess his belief was that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I was almost kind of saying like, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to do this. And I was trying to say that I think I was trying to offer to buy out at like a fraction of what I would have owed if I actually lost. And my argument was kind of like, I'm gonna complete the bet, but I'm going to lose a lot of money doing it. So we're both better off if I can like just give you like a fraction and then like just like sleep for a week. But he didn't go for that. So for the last week, I was playing something like 18 hours a day. I was losing consistently. I lost a fair amount of money for the final day, because I still hadn't finished the bet by the final day. So I enlisted my final assistant, which was my mom, to come and sit and watch to make sure, like to kind of like literally sit in my room and watch to make sure that I didn't fall asleep. And I'm grateful that she did that. And so I ended up on the last day like hitting the threshold, getting the 3 million hands. But it was a little bit bittersweet, because the last week I think I probably lost something in the range of $10,000 to $20,000. So when I got paid, that when I showed that I had played these 3 million hands and got paid, it was kind of like, okay, I just donated that money to random people at the tables. So it didn't feel quite as much of an achievement, but it did feel really good to like actually hit that and like kind of persevere at the end. I guess there were feelings of like kind of like why did I do this to myself? And not in the sense of why did I make the bet, because I think the bet made sense, but why did I let it get to that? Like at some point, like 8 hours a day felt like a lot, but at the end, 8 hours a day would have felt like a crazy amount of freedom. Being able to sleep 8 hours a day and have another 8 hours for like whatever you want to do, and then 8 hours for poker sounded like the dream. Even with how big of a kind of the crisis that December was, I think I ended up playing 990,000 hands in December, which I believe still to this day is like the most amount of hands played in 1 month by anyone at kind of like medium stakes or higher, not including like these tiny stakes. And I don't know if, because now in those days there were like a huge amount of games going at any time, so it was like feasible. Now it might not even be feasible. So that I wouldn't wish to do that again, but I think that record might be held for a while. Yeah, so I think overall in the year, like I made something in the like $500,000 to $600,000 range, which was definitely my best poker year. And I guess the negative of that was that I was like ridiculously burnt out for 2010, the year after. I had also grown this like I hadn't shaved or trimmed or anything for like many months. I think probably since like middle of September or something. It became kind of like the playoff beard or something like that. And so it looked pretty insane. But then when I got to New York, I found this like traditional barber who did this like the hot lather with the whole shaving thing, which was, the transformation was kind of scary. But I think that was like this the kind of sign of like returning to becoming a normal person again after that period. So it felt very good.
Is there anything you'd like to conclude on?
Okay. So why did I do this bet? I think a lot of it was about a lot of it was about wanting to succeed in this first year, like proving to myself that I could be successful as a poker player. And I felt like if I just wrote down that I wanted to do this 3 million hand thing, it maybe wasn't that likely to happen. But if I had some accountability, then I felt like it would be extremely likely to happen. Playing this many hands was like, and making profit felt like kind of just like solidifying that I was on the right track and that I could do this. And I don't know, what did I learn from this? I think it's maybe kind of obvious, but being like ambitious goals are cool, but the execution and like consistent execution is really important. And I think even though this made for a better story because of the kind of extreme procrastination, I think doing it consistently would have been a lot healthier. I think still to this day I have trouble like working on things consistently, and that's I think, yeah, life would be a lot better if I figured out how to do that.